How is everyone doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. So I have another great interview for everyone today. We're going to be talking to Rob Titterington, who actually was on here with me before. It's been a little while. I think it's been maybe a year, a little over a year since the last time Rob was on here with us on the channel. But I brought him back because we're going to have a whole conversation around AI in banking today. And I thought Rob was the perfect person to bring in because of a lot of the things that we're going to go through today. So I'm going to tell everybody to stick tight for just a second. So I've got Rob here with me. So how are you doing today, Rob?
Doing well, Joe. How are you?
Perfect. Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for coming back on and spending a little time with us again.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
So it's been a little while since the last time you were on, so I figured I'd give you a moment here just to kind of reintroduce yourself to the audience. So if you want to take a minute and just tell everybody who you are, what you do, and because again, that's going to tie into our whole conversation here today.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Rob Titterington. I'm an executive banking recruiter. I work with the Highland Consulting Group. We're part of Management Recruiters International. In the most simplest form, what do? I work with community-sized banks and credit unions to help them find top talent. And on the flip side of that, I also work with individuals who are looking for the next opportunity in their career. And at the end of the day, I try to make a match between those folks, and I do that essentially from Pennsylvania. Now I've expanded my territory since the last time we spoke, the whole way up through Maine.
Nice, fantastic. So given what you do, Rob, I thought that you were the perfect person to bring in for this because and just so everybody knows, here's like it's not going to go perfectly, but these are the main topics that we're going to cover. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI in banking. How are banks really using AI today? And what I'm hoping to do here is to kind of cut through the hype, if you will, and get to reality. What's really going on versus the hype that you see in the news media every day. So we're going to talk about AI in banking in terms of job applications, hiring, skills, AI skills. What maybe does that mean? Does that not mean? Will jobs go away? We're also going to talk about how do we feel about augmentation, what AI potentially could do for us, and then also capacity. How is AI potentially going to add capacity to what we do on a daily, yearly basis, and and how that could influence hiring into the future. So with that being said, I would kick it off to you, Rob, by basically asking you, what are you seeing out there right now in terms of, how are banks, like, in other words, you're talking to people every day you're talking to banks that are hiring people every day. Are you seeing this big shift in terms of what the typical resume you would see for a position? Like, in other words, let's take a credit analyst, for example. Say you've got a credit analyst over here. Are you seeing the banks all of a sudden saying, well, we have to have AI skills for this credit analyst in order for us to consider hiring that individual?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. And a little bit of a spoiler alert. I think all these conversations that we're having around AI, I think it's new. I think it's trendy. I would tell you, though, my personal opinion is that it's not going anywhere. It may sizzle out a little bit, and ultimately, I think it becomes one of those things that's just a part of daily life. We don't think twice about it, right? We think about the evolution of certain things that you and I had. 8 tracks and cassette tapes turned into CDs, right? And that turned into digital music. And the younger generation, they don't know any better, right? If I showed them a vinyl, they would probably say, "What the heck do I do with that? I don't have anywhere to put that. I can't carry that in my pocket with me." Well, I think, and it may be a reflection on some of the institutions that I work with, being the smaller community banks. I don't want to say that there aren't a handful of them out there that are kind of front runners when it comes to technology.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, what you need to see is somebody who still understands the core job function. I find that there are a lot of parallels between what I do on a daily basis and what you do as a lender, right? We're making assessments and we're putting people through an approval process. And I think that the AI piece of it is helpful. It's a tool that helps me with efficiency. It's a tool that's built into some of the softwares that I use, and it helps me to get to connections quicker. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's a skill that is something that you can learn. It can be taught. Where if I'm looking at a loan application and I don't understand the story that those numbers are telling me, then we've completely missed the mark. So I do think it's a useful tool. I do think it's something that we'll continue to see people build a skill set around. But at the end of the day, my opinion is if you don't understand the function in itself, then it's a miss.
Gotcha. And let me ask you this. Do you think people are not getting hired if they don't put some kind of AI skill or something on their resume right now? Like, is like, if we gotten to that degree that if somebody's not saying that they, I don't know, and we'll get into what is AI skills. We're gonna talk about that a little bit, I'm just trying to, I guess, cut through the hype versus the reality. Like, in other words, if you had a billion-dollar bank sitting here right now and they're looking at a couple different resumes, if somebody doesn't have the latest and greatest, oh, I could do all this with Chat GPT. If they're just, I've got credit skills, maybe I've been doing it for a couple years, I'm a college graduate, whatever. Like, again, I'm just trying to get to the point of that. What I feel is that I don't think that you've gotten to the point yet where companies are basically saying, I'm not going to hire that person because I didn't see some AI buzzwords on their resume. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, in my personal experience, I can tell you that the number of times that I've had a candidate be declined because they had a lack of AI talent on the resume is absolutely zero. It's not been a factor yet, and I would go even deeper to that to say that whenever I take a new job on, I always ask a couple of things. I sort of break these down into buckets. So what are the must-have skills? What are the nice to have skills, and what are the wish list, but this makes somebody basically a purple squirrel, right? They don't exist. And I've not had anybody tell me that AI, that Chat GPT experience, whatever it might be, I've not had anybody tell me that's in the must have bucket.
Yeah, and I don't, and I, just so people understand, I'm not downplaying AI. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not saying it's not important. I just think that there's so much news I've reported on, and there's so much chatter that I think you just get the impression today, like, oh, if I'm applying for a job, particularly at a bank, and oh, if I don't have all this, all these AI buzzwords, and I'm not, a cutting edge with the latest and greatest, that means I have no shot of getting hired. And I just think that is like a little over the top. I don't think we've quite gotten to that point yet where, employers are sitting there saying, hey, if I don't have if I have somebody here who doesn't have, like, again, the quote unquote AI skills on their resume, I'm not hiring them. So again, I think it's trying to get to where are we at in the real world versus a lot of the media hype, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think there's some exaggeration right now, but Joe, to your point, I would say this: if you're not in the background starting to learn this thing and understand how
mhm.
it works and at least become familiar with it, there is going to be a point where you probably get left behind. I don't think that we're there today, and I think that's likely what you're getting at, and I agree with that completely. But I do think that I've seen it in my own desk where there are certain functions that used to take an absorbent amount of time that they were time consuming, but you had to do them. I can
Yep.
really cut that down now and focus on the core responsibility of what I want to do. I mentioned a little bit earlier the one software that we just started to utilize. It's got AI built into it, and the AI doesn't have a whole lot to do with the assessment of the person. If I get a resume from you, my first assessment are these two eyes. And I'm a firm believer that you you can pick out keywords, you can find those hot button words, but those same people could be using Chat GPT to write that resume, right? So now all of a sudden we've got a bunch of resumes that just duplicate each other. can I get you on the phone and can you back that up, right? Do you actually know what it is that you're talking about, or did you just have AI generate this for you so that you could be a player? I think that's the big differentiator. And I said this to you somewhat jokingly, but there's some honesty to it. When we first connected a couple of days back, I said that if the relationship component of this business ever becomes not a part of it, where it's just so transactional that my job can be replaced by AI, then you're not going to have to show me the door. I'm already going to be leaving.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I think so. Let me ask you this. I read this article probably a couple months ago now in the Wall Street Journal, and it talked about how young people were extremely frustrated because they felt like unless literally they knew somebody or had a personal relationship with somebody, there was no shot that they were ever going to get an interview at a company because of AI. That basically they felt like they put the resume in, AI, I guess, screens all the resumes and stuff get shot to the side. I guess if it doesn't have a couple of the keywords they're looking for, or maybe some of the experience isn't quite right, that kind of thing. Do you see that, like in the banks that you're dealing with? Are they using AI in that fashion in terms of screening resumes and do you get those kind of conversations with some of the people you deal with where they feel like if they're maybe not talking to you or not working with you, that there's basically no shot that they're going to be able to get in front of a decision maker that could hopefully give them a job?
Yeah, I certainly think that exists, and I think it's unfortunate. Here's the deal, though. At the end of the day, it's all about, we only have so much time, right?
Mhm.
It's about efficiency, and I think that's where AI can help. I'm a big advocate, and I'll probably say this 3 or 4 times during the course of this conversation. There is so much more to a person than what's simply on a resume.
Mhm.
Somebody who's got a ton of experience, it's very difficult to put a lifetime worth of work onto a page or two and have that tell a true and complete story. I know some high level, let's just call them C-suite type folks who, their resume looks like their 7-year-old niece drew it on a crayon with a napkin. Drew it on a napkin with a crayon, right? They're not good resume writers, but they're excellent at what they do.
Mhm.
And I think this is where it scares me. It's always been the catch-22, right? To get a job, you have to have experience. Well, how can I get experience, right? If I
Mhm.
don't have experience to begin with.
Yep.
That's always been a challenge for folks coming out of college. I did the same thing, and Chat GPT didn't exist then. But I would tell you, the part that really frightens me is that all of a sudden, we start to use this tool and it starts to generate things for us, and maybe it can generate a resume for somebody who has very little experience to make them look a little more elevated than they actually are. Where I get afraid of this thing, and I don't know if this is a concern of yours too, but my concern is that we use this tool, but we're not fact checking it. We're just 100%
Mhm.
trusting it, buying into it, and treating it as gospel, because it has its flaws. It's not always right, and anybody has access to it. So, knowing a few key things, I know enough about banking that I could probably put a resume together that said I was a bank president, right?
Mhm.
And until I get on the phone with somebody, they might not know any different. But I think what comes along with this, it's that great power, great responsibility. We still have to do our due diligence and fact checking what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that is to me, that's one of the biggest dangers with this thing, because like, let's take a typical college student, right? And you get a college professor and they say, hey, I want you to write a 5-page paper on XYZ. So they run out to ChatGPT and they put a bunch of parameters in there and they say, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to, give me a 5-page paper on this and make sure to include this, and this time period and blah, blah, blah. So ChatGPT spits the paper out, and then they take it and they look at it and they're like, "Oh yeah, that looks good." But you or I look at that paper, and we're gonna look at that through a total different lens, because we're gonna look at that through years of experience, and we're going to look at the paper itself, and we're probably going to see a lot of potential mistakes, different things in that paper. Maybe something like, we might look at something and say, well, wait a minute, that's talking about this, and now it's saying something about something that happened 100 years later, so that doesn't fit in there. Or we're going to go back to the sources, and we're going to look at the sources of where did ChatGPT get this stuff from, and we might look at a lot of the sources, knowing a lot more about the world. We might look at some of the sources and say, yeah, that's biased, that's garbage. We're not using Wikipedia as a source, like that kind of thing, So, and I think that's just something that you get from, and it's not necessarily the fault of the college student. It's just life experience, right? It's just being older, having been around for a long time, having worked in the real world, so to speak. So I totally see the fear that you're saying, that it becomes something that we rely too much on, and we don't spend the time to really, become really good at our craft, because we use this tool too much as a crutch and not just as a tool. So yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, and but I would also say this too, Rob, like, I think this is a great,
I hadn't really actively thought about this, is the idea that this can shortcut some of that learning. You could probably generate that 5-page paper in the matter of 30 seconds or so. Assuming that it's all accurate, have you really learned anything?
Yes.
There was something to having to go to the source, figure it out, read it, interpret it, put it into your own language, and some of that learning. Sure, you might get a good grade, right? But is that really happening? And if that's happening in the real world, that's a little bit frightening. Now, I said all this to tell you what I'm about to say, right? I said early on that no, I've not had anybody turned down because they didn't have ChatGPT experience, or do I think that it's difficult to get a job today whenever we have all these automations screening resumes? I certainly do think that that's a challenge. All that being said, if I go home tonight and my lawn needs mowed, and I have the choice between doing it with a lawnmower with a gasoline powered engine on it, or a pair of scissors, I'd be a little bit silly to start cutting with those scissors. You know what I mean?
No, it's a great point, and I think that's a great lead in, Rob, too, to talk about augmentation and capacity. Yeah. So what I think I'm going to say it this way. I think some of the hype around this idea that AI is just, taking everybody's job tomorrow, I think some of that's a little overdone. I think some of that's a little overblown. What I really see happening in the next 3 to 5 years is AI augmenting what we currently do, giving you the ability, a lot of those tasks and things that, you had even mentioned this a few minutes ago. A lot of those tasks and things that maybe something that would have taken you a week to do, you can now do it in maybe 5 minutes, using some AI that either your company has or an outside AI. And I think, and now that frees you up to do so much more, and you could get a lot more done a lot faster now. So it's adding a lot of efficiency to what you do on a daily basis. It might even change a lot of the processes of things that you do throughout the day. So I think that is potentially a really good thing. That's gonna hopefully make a lot of companies a lot better. Now, I think, though, with that augmentation brings capacity, and how I'm going to state it is like this. So say you have $1 billion bank, and your goal is to double the size of the bank. You want to grow to a $2 billion bank. And it is, you're in the C-suite, and you're, fixing your strategy, and you might say, okay, we're $1 billion bank. We've got 150 employees, and to grow to 2 billion, we're going to need to double our employee count. We're going to need to go to 300 employees. Well, with this new technology, with the new AI that's out there, it's going, if it makes you more efficient and it adds capacity, you might be able to double the size of the bank. And instead of having to hire another 150, maybe you only need to hire 50 employees, so that saves you a tremendous amount of cost going forward as you grow your business. And I think that is a reality, a very real reality of what, could potentially happen, or, you get some mergers and you merge a couple banks together and you say, hey, you know what? Now, we put a couple banks together. Now we're $4 billion. And you know what? We had 600 employees and, we can really do this thing with 500. So we can lay off 100 employees. So I think those are very real potential scenarios that could play out here in the next few years. But I don't know. I mean, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that come out of that. I think number one, your and my jobs, I think that they'll still exist. I really do. But what I think will happen over the next 5, 10 years, whatever it might be, I think they'll start to look a little bit different. Maybe it's different in how we function on a daily basis. Hopefully, it's increased efficiencies and we can all make a lot more money. But to kind of circle this back and take it full picture, I think that we spend so much time talking about, can AI, is it going to replace people or is it going to eliminate jobs? Probably. I think it already is. I think there's a track record of that already. But at the same time, I think it's going to create opportunity. And for the people who are really good with it, who can jump on this and adapt to it and adopt it early, and early is probably already, that ship's already sailed. But as this thing evolves, and it'll evolve and it'll grow. I think that there's going to be a whole new workforce who is going to be presented with some fantastic opportunities to make a whole lot of money if they can get really good at this. Because whether it's somebody who's on the forefront and taking advantage of this early, or somebody who is a little later in the game just playing some catch up, I think ultimately, as I said earlier, it's just going to become a part of everyday life. None of us like change. It's funny because I look at folks who are my parents' age or a little bit older. They didn't grow up with computers. Computers were just coming to be as I was growing up. So as a working professional, I don't know any different. But when computers first came out, that was a big deal. And people had to take the time to learn them, or they got left behind. Well, this is really no different, in my opinion. So those are some of my thoughts. But I think there's a lot to what you just said.
Oh yeah, and I find it fascinating. Another article that I covered a couple weeks ago was on OpenAI, where they talk about they're developing a new product right now, which they're calling like an AI assistant. And what they're saying is that this product is going to be like, it's going to be like, they're saying it's going to be the third must-have product. So you'll have like your laptop over here, you'll have your cell phone, and then you're going to have this AI assistant, which is going to be like the size of this cell phone, but they're saying that this thing's not going to have a screen. Like it's going to be almost like a holographic projection kind of thing, which is good. Which again was fascinating to me. But they said that I could see a day in the not too distant future where, like, say you've got Microsoft 365. But now the Microsoft 365 is everything is like voice command, and you have that on you have that on your AI assistant or on your cell phone, whatever, and you basically you'll talk to it every morning, and you'll be like, oh hey, what's my calendar for today? What meetings and stuff do I have today? It'll tell you. And then you say, oh, you know what, I have a meeting with Rob at 6:00, and you know what, I could do that earlier now. I could do that at 5:30. So could you reach out to Rob and just let him know that I could do it earlier and see if he's okay with that? And then it just does it. It sends a text message to you. And then you say, and then it tells me back like, hey, yeah, Joe, I talked to Rob. He said he's fine with that. He can now do the meeting earlier or whatever. Like, so I think that kind of stuff could very well become a reality in the next 5 years.
I've always been one to, I always bought the cheap, the $200-300 phone because I fish a lot and I've been known to drop these things into lakes. They don't do real well whenever they're submerged for a long time. This is and no, I'm not paid, but this is the Google Pixel 9, which is one of their newer models. It's got AI built into it. It's got the whole thing. I can tell you this. I've not even set it up yet because I don't know. For me, it's a little bit much, but I can tell you, I use Chat GPT on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But I can also tell you it's not without its flaws, right? Have you ever gone in there and you're trying to figure out the perfect way to word an email, and you go in and you tell it, I need an email that will be in this tone to this particular person in this role, and I want the message to be warm but professional, and you give it all these parameters, and the first dadgum thing it comes back with is, I hope this message finds you well. Like, no, figure it out. We don't want to say that in the first line of every email. And when you get it too, you're like, oh, well, that wasn't written by that person, right? So I hope you don't use that in your emails. And I've emailed with you, so I don't think that you do. But it's not perfect. I could tell you that. But I go back to this. It's a tool that gives me a few minutes back in my day every day.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you. I mean, I'm experimenting with different websites right now. I don't know if you're familiar with like Canva.
Yeah,
Canva is a great one, very very user friendly. You could make and do a lot of different things with it. A lot of the AI sites, unfortunately, especially if you're using if you're looking for images or creating some type of graphics or video or something, a lot of them are behind a paywall. You got to pay. It's not like ChatGPT. I mean, I think ChatGPT has a premium level that you could pay for, but for a lot of these sites, I mean, you got to pay, you got to subscribe to the site in order to be able to use it. So I think some of this stuff that'll slow down the usage of some of this stuff, even if it's really good, because you got to pay for it at the end of the day. So again, it's really interesting though. But
there's so many options right now, right?
oh yeah, so I agree with you, and I think your comments echo so true that like it hasn't taken over yet, so to speak, but it's on its way, and it's something that, yeah, if you're not working with it or trying to become more familiar with it, yeah, you may wake up one day and be totally behind, so it is a very interesting thing, but yeah, no, I thought this was a great conversation here, Rob. Any final thoughts or anything before we wrap up here?
You know what? I think we covered most of it. And I'll just reiterate that I think that this is a tool. I don't think it's one that's going away. I think it's going to continue to grow and it's going to continue to evolve. It just happens to be a really hot topic right now. I think that will sizzle out. And the next new great thing will come along. But I do think it's something that is going to be impactful. I think both in a positive and a negative way. But I'm going to continue to do what I can to learn how to use it, to take advantage of it. And, hopefully I find it to be beneficial. I think that will be the case. I just hope that we don't get to the point in time where it maybe becomes a little smarter than we are, because that's kind of frightening.
Yeah, no, it is, and I will echo one other thing that you said, Rob. You said,
Yeah.
you think it's going to create a lot of AI is going to create a lot of opportunity, and I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I think when you look back at like the creation of the internet, and we went from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to Web 3.0, and the Internet of Things, and you look at all the new jobs and all the different things that has created. It's amazing. So I think AI will do a lot of the same things. I think it'll create a lot of jobs that aren't even thought of today, and it'll create a lot of new and interesting opportunities for people to do some pretty amazing things. So I'm optimistic in that regard. I think that is how it will hopefully play out. But there's a darker side to it, and there's definitely some things to be concerned with, no doubt. So, but anyway,
No, and I say that jokingly, right? But I think in the back of our minds, we're all sort of a little bit timid and fearful of what this could become, if it gets out of its cage, right? But yeah, I think that's just from watching too many movies.
Hey, man! I grew up watching The Terminator and 100 other movies, so yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I'm terrified
Yep.
that the T800 comes walking out one day.
Yeah, that's right.
But okay. So anyway, so if anybody it wants to follow you or get in touch with you out there, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm old school. I told you earlier, I'm relationship oriented. I want to get on the phone. I want to have a conversation, right? So I'll plug my number real quick. It's 724-837-6337. That's my work line, but it does roll to my cell too. So calls, texts. I'm not a difficult person to track down. I think I can see my name here on the screen. I don't know if everybody's going to listen to this by way of video. So if you want to track me down on LinkedIn, certainly feel free to do that. That's a good way also to keep tabs on any current jobs that I'm recruiting for. But it's Rob Titterington. Last name's Titterington, and that's all I got.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on and spending a little time. Don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you come back soon. And I'm sure we'll be talking more, job recruiting and AI into till the cows come home.
Joe, I think we could have the same conversation 6 months or a year out from now, and it's probably a very different conversation.
True. Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Rob.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that was Rob Titterington, a bank recruiter with Highland Consulting Group. Again, we thank him so much for coming on and just spending a couple of minutes with us today. And I'm sure Rob will be back again in the future. But I'll wrap up by saying if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has a great day out there, and I will see everyone again real soon. Thanks a lot.